This is the entire collection of anything that was going on in the Şanlıurfa region prior to Göbekli Tepe, and it amounts to about 10 flint or stone implements or projectile points. Now that doesn't mean that there was not settlement here, just the fact that quite clearly they've not uncovered anything yet. But what we do know is that the culture behind Göbekli Tepe was certainly up and running in eastern Anatolia as much as 1,000 years earlier. There's a site there called Şemi, which Şemi, C-H-E-M-I, which is related to the same culture, but it's like a proto-form. But it does seem as if there are other influences from Göbekli Tepe, possibly coming from the south, from what's northern Syria and places like that. But as I've said, you know, in my books, and for even Professor Klaus Schmidt says that there does appear to be an influence coming in from the north, probably between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. I mean, obviously have a look at these flints, not much to look at there, but as soon as we step into the next room, bang, Göbekli Tepe culture. This is obviously a reconstruction of enclosure D at Göbekli Tepe, and the whole way that this has been recreated is interesting because you come in from the south, well, the southeast as they've made it here, but you would approach from the south and you would come here and you'd stand between these incredibly beautiful, large, 18.5 feet tall monoliths, and you'd have looked through that hole, which should be in the centre. It's wrongly placed. And if I get an opportunity to speak to somebody about this, I will do, and ask them to actually put it in the correct position. But you'd have been able to look through that at night, and you would have seen not just the bright star Cygnus, bright star Deneb in the constellation of Cygnus setting on the horizon, but around it you'd have seen the Milky Way, where it bifurcates or forks at this point. And this, I think, would have been the point of synchronization that would have allowed the shaman or shamaness or the priestesses to enter into the altered state of consciousness, so that they could then project their souls out of the body through that hole into the sky world, so that it could do its business. You know, it could counteract supernatural forces, it could speak to celestial beings, communicate with the ancestors, you know, see the gods or whatever. You know, this to me is what was going on, and to me this is the affirmation that these enclosures are focused towards the north. They're not focused towards the south. These are only looking at you as you walk in here. You know, you are walking between these, that you're facing them just in the same way. If you walk into a church and you got Jesus and the Virgin Mary each side of you as you walk towards the high altar, it's the same thing. They're not looking towards the southern horizon. They are part of the experience for the person, the entrant, the person going inside this building, this structure. And the altar, if you like, if you want to call it that, the Holy of Holies, is the whole stone, the soul hole. The soul hole is the Holy of Holies. That's the point of exit of this world and the entrance into the next, so that you can go about your business there. You can communicate with the ancestors, you can speak to the gods, the goddesses, you can, you know, encounter the celestial beings or the supernatural forces, the creatures, the tricksters that would have been associated with the stability of the world. Right, this is the soul hole, okay? This, Klaus Schmidt himself said he thought that this represented a soul hole. This would have been part of an entrance into a lost enclosure. And now Klaus Schmidt came from Germany. He would have known about megalithic architecture there. In fact, I think he was quite interested in the subject. And he would have known that you have these holes in the entrance facades of the dolmens there. There's quite a number in Germany itself with these soul holes. So this is how he knew about this term Seelenloch, soul hole in English. The idea of, to allow the passage of the soul from this world to the next, be it the burial that's inside the dolmen, the soul being able to come out through the hole and wander out and coming back, like the false doors that you find in various ancient Egyptian temples. So, you know, I think that, that he was probably right. And this is like a more portable form of the soul hole that you get in enclosures C and D. Now, which type of enclosure this came from, we don't know, because this was found basically loose on the ground when Schmidt got there. I mean, there was a number of bits and pieces that they actually just picked up off the ground.
It was in 3 parts, it looks
like. Yeah. I mean, obviously, well, actually, I think it's, is it 1, 2, it's 4? Yeah, 4 pieces. 4. And obviously, they picked this up, and anything decent they took away. Anything that they didn't really want to worry about, they just numbered, and they placed it in a big garden area right by that entrance. Opposite, and you'll see this when we go back tomorrow, there's a whole garden full of just fragments that they obviously found and have not even bothered to take away from the site. As archaic features, you know, quite very strong jaw, a little bit like Earth a Man, but even longer. Now, he has a very strange ponytail. The hair is drawn up and gathered together in what appears to be like a sort of ponytail, and he's wearing, and it seems to be partly shaved around the top of the ears. Now, again, we don't know whether this was just some artistic style or what, but this is a very, very strange statue.
I wonder if it had obsidian at one time in that eye.
Yeah. It's possible that the eyes may have been obsidian indeed. Now, this is one of the only obvious relief images of a woman that's been found so far at Göbekli Tepe. It was discovered by the altar, on the floor in front of the altar in the Lion Pillar building, close to the fig mulberry tree on the top of it. Okay? Now, it was not in primary use, it was in secondary use. In other words, it had probably come from somewhere else and been moved here at a point, so it doesn't necessarily date to the same time frame as the Lion Pillar building. In other words, it could be from an earlier phase. So we don't know exactly what it represents or whether it is connected with that particular temple. But obviously you have a woman here with a very strange, I would say, mushroom or serpent headed, because you'll see that the heads of the serpents look very, very similar to this, which we'll see shortly. You have got some goddess statues found here, some small ones. Yeah, I mean, you know, these are more obvious goddess statues. That's considered a raptor. This is the famous Urfa man, okay? It's a stone idol that was found actually in Şanlıurfa, very close to the pools of Abraham, in the, I think it was the beginning of the 1990s. And it was found during urban development, and they found it, they got it out, and they did excavations at the spot, and they found that there was a settlement here that went back in age to around 9000 BC. And it's this reason why the guides will tell you that Urfa has a history going back to 9000 BC because of this early settlement. And the fact it's so close to the pools of Abraham and the birthplace of Abraham does definitely suggest that there would have been a continuity going from this early settlement right the way through to the age of Abraham, let's call it that, then through to modern Şanlıurfa. Now, the actual idol itself is very, very important because firstly, it's got a head and a face. Now you might think, oh well, so what? But what this proves is that the culture who were responsible for Göbekli Tepe knew how to do faces if they wanted. But for some reason he hasn't got a mouth, which presumably is purposeful. His eyes are made of the black volcanic glass known as obsidian, which was highly prized. And what's interesting is that obsidian eyes were also used in the statues on Easter Island, the Moai statues that they used, bless you, Gesundheit, Salute. And so, you know, this is an interesting thing. Why would you create these people with these black eyes? I mean, obviously, presumably it represents the iris. But that's that. Obviously, it's life-size. Around its neck, you have these twin bands that almost certainly are meant to represent some kind of emblems of office, that, you know, he's wearing some kind of thing around his neck, that gravity is pulling it down. Either that, or it's some kind of garment. Right, what Matt here has just pointed out is there's a tiny slither of, presumably is it bone or something? Let's have a look. Bone, a bone plaque from that was found at Göbekli Tepe that I've never ever seen before, and it almost certainly shows two T-shaped pillars, standing in the middle of which is a person, and above them, between the two pillars, is the soul hole, as shown in enclosure D and enclosure C, and probably within other enclosures that are now either covered up or destroyed. So this is showing the veneration that may have been taking place in these enclosures whilst they were operational, and showing the significance of the soul hole. Yeah. That's a major find, thank you. That's yeah, and I shall credit you in the book. I shall definitely mention this in the book.